So today, we're going to talk about obsession. We're going to talk about a delusion and the very thin line between devotion and horror. Okay?
I'm ready.
Yeah. Okay. So before this story becomes what it's known for, it actually starts in a very ordinary way with a young woman named Maria Elena Milagro de Hoyos. Elena was a Cuban-American woman living in Key West in the 1920s.
Okay.
Her father made cigars. Her family was local. People knew her. Key West is also like kind of a tight-knit sort of spot. Like if you're not a tourist, you probably know each other. Mm-hmm. And by most accounts, as women in true crime stories often are, she was, of course, beautiful. Dark-haired, soft-spoken, and, you know, the kind of woman that stood out, right? She lit up a room, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. So she had been married, but she has a lot of trauma and sadness and heartache in her life because she had suffered a miscarriage and her husband left, and it was just too much, that trauma. And so she moved to Miami. Now, she was still legally married to that husband, but for all practical purposes, she was, let's at least say, single, if not alone, when her health kind of started to take a turn.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She had her parents in Miami, but as far as romance goes, she was solo. So in 1930, her mother brought her to the Marine Hospital in Key West and was hoping for treatment that might slow whatever illness that she had. It's likely that what it was tuberculosis. And
oh, wow.
There's
okay.
not
Oh, this
really,
is the 20s. Okay, right.
Yeah, 20s and 30s. There's not a whole lot you can really do. I mean, at that point, it was sort of just like a very long, withdrawn sort of goodbye. Ooh. Yeah. So over the next year, into like 1931, she would grow weaker and she did eventually die. Mm-hmm. And again, as... just like with my zombie story, right? Usually, that's where someone's story would end. But that's not the case, because at that same hospital was a man also waiting for Elena to get better and hoping that she would improve, and a man who very much believed that she was not just another patient. And his name was Carl Tanzler, and he called himself Carl von Kozel.
Okay,
so...
I have no idea where the way that I am like, what could possibly happen?
And I'm really glad, because I feel like, again, I know this story. I've known it for a long time because I found it a long time ago and I covered it when I wanted to be a YouTuber, right? But I do feel like in circles of, oh, have you heard the story about such and such, or the murder of so-and-so, or the terrible thing of this, I don't feel like he comes up a lot. And I don't feel like Maria comes up a lot. And so I'm glad that you don't know about this, because that makes it a lot more interesting to tell you about. So Carl, he was interesting. He believed that a long-dead German countess had been visiting him in dreams his entire life, showing him, tell me if this sounds familiar, the face of a woman that he was meant to love. And we've talked about this, like, in your story, right, of my father came to me and told me to kill these women, or, you know, or with Herbert Mullen, like, my father was telling me these things. And so we have yet another case of this delusion of, I have been shown or told sort of divinely something special. Okay. Yeah. So we're checking boxes in terms of, like, profiling. So... and when I say he had thought this for years, like, he grew up seeing a face of a woman and feeling like this long dead countess was like, this is your love, this will happen for you. So when he sees Elena in real life for the first time, he's like, oh my God, it's her. It's the face. This is the woman.
Oh, the face that's been telling me?
The face that's been shown to me by the ghost of this countess.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, when Elena died, Carl did not accept it. Not emotionally, not psychologically, and as this story unfolds, not in any way that you and I might call normal or healthy at all.
Is this man also a patient at the place? Or is he a doctor? No. Is he a nurse?
Well, you're on the right track, because, yes, why is he there? So let's get into it. Who the hell is Carl Tanzler?
Sometimes
referred to as George Carl Tanzler, was born in Dresden, Germany in 1877. I have dog hair in my mouth. Got it. All right. Before World War I even broke out, he had already been kind of bouncing around the globe, spending time in both India and Australia.
Okay.
And when the war started, his German citizenship made him a liability in Australia, so he was rounded up and placed in an internment camp.
Yeah.
Yes, this is not good. At one point, he actually tried to escape by building his own boat, which did not work. And after the war, he was released. But let's give that its due, right? Like, that is traumatic and horrible, and I can't imagine, and I'm not dismissing that as trauma. I just want to be clear. But he was released. He was alive. Mm-hmm. But he was barred from returning to Germany. So he ended up in the Netherlands instead.
What year are we in?
We're in the late 1800s. It's like, it was 1877 when he was born. World War I's happening, so you know where we are now in time.
Got it.
And then moving on. He did get married while in the Netherlands. Okay. He had 2 daughters. But, again, more trauma stacking on top of things. He suffered a devastating loss when one of them died at 10 years old.
Oh.
Yeah. So eventually the family does immigrate to the U.S. and they settle in Key West. So that's how he winds up there.
Okay.
But alongside all of that very real and very hard life history, he's living a very different world in his mind, right? Mm-hmm. Because remember the Countess I told you about? Mm-hmm. From a young age, he claimed to receive visions in his dreams from a long-dead German noblewoman, Countess Anna Constantina von Brockdorff, also known as the Countess of Cosel.
Is this a real person?
Yes.
Okay.
And like way, way, way dead before he was born. Like this is very, yeah.
Okay.
So I did a little Google of her. Because I had the same question. I'm like, did he create this woman?
Uh-huh.
So Anna Constantia von Brockdorff, later known as the Countess of Cosel, was an 18th century German noblewoman who rose to extraordinary power as the mistress of Augustus the Strong. He, in case you don't know, was the King of Poland and Elector of Saxony. For a brief stretch in the early 1700s, she wasn't just his lover, but also political confidant and a real force at court. Okay, so we love a woman who can do both. But then he turned on her. Man, she was stripped of her influence, banished to Saxony. She spent the next 49 years of her life in confinement.
Oh.
She was at one time one of the most powerful women in Europe. I was
just about to say, as soon as a woman is powerful, men are like, we cannot allow it.
Go to jail. Yes.
Which?
Which? You probably can't even float. So she died in exile, largely forgotten by the world. Yeah, very terrible.
This is devastating.
Awful. Yes. Okay. But you can see how Carl might kind of relate to her, right? Like she was exiled into confinement. He was a prisoner during war, right? And felt very much like I should be contributing to society. Instead, I'm being held here, and then I can't go back home where I feel like I belong. And so I can see the connection that he might make.
I wonder how in the world you would learn about someone like that. You'd have to read about it in a book or learn about it like historically. I mean,
he was from Germany, and so for her to be like such a powerful woman in German history,
common knowledge kind of thing back then, maybe,
or at least like it's a little bit less surprising that he might have come across her. But however he found her, he believed that she was guiding him from beyond the grave. And he became super obsessed with her image. And I don't blame him. She's beautiful. I'll send you a little...
Ooh.
Send you a little Google.
Is this like a 4K photo that you're sending me?
No, I'll just send... I had to find it first because I wasn't ready.
You know what's so funny is like... Can you imagine in a couple...
I guess.
100 years, thousands years... Oh, okay, queen. Okay. Complexion.
Okay, cleavage.
Yes, girl. I was just having a funny little thought of you showing me a painting, and then in 1,000 years when they're doing whatever version of this on another planet or whatever, it's going to be like iPhone selfies. You know what I mean?
We should start painting each other. When enough people listen to this, that there's a Patreon, that'll be it. Like, as you're telling me your story, I'm just painting you.
Yeah, really.
For anyone who's wondering, I that won't be good.
You could do a stylistic version of me,
super stylistic. Yeah, very abstract. So yes, he's obsessed with her image. And in case you were really paying attention there, he did take her title as part of his own name. Because remember when I said he sometimes referred to himself, as Carl Tanzler von Kozel?
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
That's where it came from. He was
Whoa,
like, yes.
Okay, wow.
We're
all right.
connected. So to him, this wasn't fantasy. This wasn't, of course, he didn't think it was delusion. It was like destiny.
I would love to know what his relationship with his mother was like, but that's not something that will.
I think you can probably figure it out. So
before he,
again, I'm a profiler now. It's official. And so I'm going to go ahead and tell you that he probably had a very unhealthy relationship with her, and she was probably like a little bit emotionally abusive toward him. So before he ever became the Carl von Kozel that we know, Tanzler was very much living kind of untethered from reality. He left India for Australia, and his plan was to hop over to the South Seas, but can relate. He got distracted. And he got distracted by engineering projects, actually. He bought boats. He bought an organ. He bought an island. And he basically just stayed. And listen, until I got my ADHD meds right, I also could be found just buying stuff and going, I could do this, or maybe this is a hobby that I should.
It really resonates. Yeah.
Yes.
Times have changed. You can't buy an island anymore, really, with the same, accessibility wise.
The island dollar does not go as far anymore.
No.
So he was actually, he did this, he stayed wherever he was for 10 years. And he was in the middle of building what he called, I have no judgment for this man. He was in the middle of building what he called a trans-ocean flying machine. I'm thinking like a blimp, I think. When World War I broke out and the British authorities scooped him up as a German national and threw him into an internment camp. So that was how that whole thing happened.
Okay.
Because he was on the wrong island, right? And so they took him. Eventually, he was sent to trial in Begol, which is a fortress-like prison perched on cliffs over the ocean. And while he was imprisoned, he secretly built a sailboat in a completely unhinged attempt to escape. Also, listen, so many props to him for having the wherewithal, the ability to make a boat, because it sounds like he had started doing that before. He had done that before.
How do you secretly make a sailboat in jail?
Okay, well, there's that question. And also the question of, if you're going to try to make a boat for an escape, the most leisurely type of boat feels like the wrong move. Like, come sail away. It's just like playing in the background. And he's like, I'm doing it. And as soon as he gets in the boat, they're just like, no.
They just reach out and grab him.
Yeah,
because he's 2 feet from the shore.
They just like grab the sail. So,
what are the alternatives though at that time? You know what I mean?
The blimp sounds like it would have been a better option. Again, very hard to do probably in an internment camp.
Right.
But I mean, anything seems like whatever
than a sailboat.
But you're getting a sense of who he is.
You get a really good visual of him just like very slowly floating away. Yeah. Okay.
It's like the sail is just napkins and he's like stitched together. But you can kind of, we're painting a picture of him, right? That he's. To me, the way that he has always sounded is almost like Willy Wonka.
I definitely feel that. Yes,
just
absolutely.
This way of like, oh, well, I don't have to be held back because I can do this thing. And it's so like way too many steps ahead. Yeah, like you skipped a lot of spaces on the Candyland board, and I think we got to reel it back in. So after the war, like I kind of alluded to earlier, he was dumped in Holland with the other released prisoners, and he did find his way back to Germany, but again, he was kind of barred from fully re-entering, but he was able to at least reunite with his mother, And together they kind of lived through the wreckage of post-war Europe. But around 1920, he married Doris Schaefer and then had the 2 daughters I mentioned. And so when he did leave for good was 1926, and he sailed to Cuba and then to Florida, where he reunited with his sister, and he brought his wife and daughters over soon after. But within a year, he left them behind and headed to Key West. Yes, so again, it's like, all right, go Carl, you're figuring it out. And then it's like, Carl, bud, Carl, what you doing? Yeah, because he reinvented himself once again as Carl von Cosel. This is when he like really starts calling himself that, because he's always sort of identified that way, but now that's like how he introduces himself.
Interesting.
And to answer your question from earlier, he takes a job as a radiology tech at the U.S. Marine Hospital.
He's a radiologist. Oh, he's not beating the allegations that radiologists are kind of a little bit weird.
I don't think I've ever heard that allegation.
Yeah.
Okay. Radiologists weigh in. Are you a weirdo?
Are you a weirdo? And you know what?
Same.
Yeah.
Also, radiologists, have you ever tried to build a sailboat?
Have you ever tried to build a sailboat? Have you ever left your children and your wife? Maybe.
Bought an island.
We're like really narrowing it down here. Who knows? Let us know if this really resonates. This story really resonates with you.
3,000 people are like, actually, yeah, I've done all that stuff. It's pretty weird. So through all of this, running in parallel to his marriage, his children, the war trauma, and the other narrative that he's been telling himself since childhood, that the ghost of the Countess is visiting him in visions and showing him the face of his destined soulmate, I want to stop and I want to talk about, list it out, right? The very obvious trauma that this man has already, the ghost of this man, sorry, my mic just took on a life of its own.
Carl knocked your mic off.
Sorry, Carl, I'm about to give you some kudos, my
dude.
dude.
This whole time, I just want to go, Carl, like on
Jimmy Neutron.
Jimmy Neutron. This whole time, it's just been, yeah, I just had to.
That's how the Countess comes to him in his mind.
Carl,
this is a woman you should marry. So first, we have what we've already touched on a few times, right? Which is displacement and chronic instability from a young age. Definitely. He had left Germany early. He moved around a lot. He never really had a stable home or a rooted identity. Wartime internment and imprisonment. Loss of autonomy and forced exile, because again, he was allowed to hang out in Germany for a little bit, right? Long enough to kind of build that family, but it was like, get out of here. Living through post-World War I societal collapse, because when he did get back to Germany, he spent 3 years there witnessing the economic, political, and social devastation that followed the war.
Yeah.
Family separation, because he did leave his mother for years during the war with no contact. Later immigrated again, eventually leaving his wife and children behind in Florida when he went to Key West. One of his children dying from diphtheria, which is apparently one of the most like psychologically devastating losses that a parent can have, obviously. I mean, what do you do? Chronic identity fracturing, because he kept reinventing himself legally and psychological. He was Carl Tanzler, with a K. Carl with a K. And then Carl with a C, Carl von Cosel. And then Carl with a K again, Carl Tanzler von Cosel. And so he just, like these little tiny shifts.
Wow.
And then, of course, this long-term fantasy attachment from childhood with the Countess, right? So from a psychological perspective, Doc, any feelings there? Any bells ringing?
You know, I really want to give myself kudos for this one, because let me just say, I have worked a lot on my own shit to hold space for men, specifically fathers, who have gone through a lot. Yeah, period.
That was the end of her statement.
That was it. Who have gone through a lot and have made some decisions. And have opened up the capacity of their humanness. If you had talked to me about this 5 years ago, I would have been like, fuck Carl. But we're not there.
With a C and a K.
And with a C and a K. We contain multitudes. And I do have empathy for this man.
Hold on to that.
Right now.
Yeah.
I have empathy for this man right now.
Right now. Same.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, would you educate me a little bit on, what do we call it now? DID. Would you educate me a little bit on DID when it comes to... Well, let me reframe it like this, because I don't want you to feel like that's the biggest question I've ever asked you on this podcast.
No, I'm so ready to answer it, but...
Good, because I'm looking at this and thinking, it's not like he's making big shifts. He's not introducing himself as like, I'm John, and then I'm Bill, and then I'm Rita, right? Like he's... But he keeps changing who he is, and to me that seems much bigger than just a name change. So I'm curious if we think that... what's happening there?
So I have a lot to say about this. I'll try to keep it as concise as I can.
Yeah, take your time. It's our podcast.
Wait a second. I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Absolutely.
I have a lot of strong feelings about like the pathologizing language of diagnoses. You already know this. I've talked about this in every other episode ever that we've done, and outside of this space. But so DID, for those of you who don't know, used to be called multiple personality disorder. So it was renamed dissociative identity disorder, and it is lumped together in the DSM with other dissociative disorders. There are, conceptually, it's that a person contains alters, and each of those alters may or may not be aware of the other.
The other's existence, yeah.
Right. And a common misconception is that it would present exactly how you're describing, where it's like, and kind of, the movie Sybil, like kind of really...
The show, yeah.
Wait, is it a show?
Sybil was a show.
Wait, really?
Wasn't it? Unless this is like a Mandela effect. I'm so sure.
Oh, no, my wires are crossed. I thought it was a movie. Either way, Sybil really did a number for the DID community.
It was a 2-part made-for-television movie mini-series that aired. So that's why... We're both right.
We're both right.
Perfect. All the time.
So, common misconception, mostly through media, is that someone would present as these different, almost like caricatures of a personality. And really, well, also another branch off of this is that there is a lot of discourse within the mental health community field, whatever, about if it's even, people are like, oh, I don't think that it's real, or, oh, it's this, it's actually miscategorized as that. Yes, very divisive. I have experienced what I would consider to be a deeply dissociative identity disorder. Does that mean that it's the textbook DSM definition of what it is? Closest thing I've seen, in my opinion, and I've seen it a couple of times. And now that we're popularizing this IFS, which is internal family systems, they kind of weirdly have it's, I don't even know how to describe, but it's like...
No, I can already see where you're going, because it's yes. Sort of like, if I'm able to call up little Heather, right, and think about, well, what's little Heather reacting to in this? What's so different from a little Heather living within me?
Yes.
And an older Heather living within me who can come out if, like, little Heather can't handle something really traumatic.
So we are seeing in real time what it looks like for just the more widely, just a practice of something being more widely accepted. It then makes something like DID is not as divisive. Or do you get what I'm saying here?
Yeah, but what dangerous territory. I can see how that would be complicated.
It's hard because I'm in this world, right? I'm in my fishbowl. I don't know what other people know or don't know outside of my space. Internal family systems is conceptually that we are all made up of parts. So if you've ever seen Inside Out, that movie was made, and I think I've said this before on here, but that movie was basically made the people who helped write it were actually IFS therapists. And conceptually, it's that we are made up of parts. You know how we always say, like, oh, a part of me this, a part of me that. It has changed my life. It has helped me between that and somatic therapy. It's the best thing that I've literally ever implemented into my just being, and I highly recommend. With that being said, I also have many clients and have worked with many clients through dissociative disorders because I primarily work with people who have complex PTSD. And they can obviously go hand in hand. With that being said, I feel very strongly about when the misconception does come up about like it feeling like different like versions or types or but I get all kind of activated about it because I'm like, oh, it's this common misconception. And who's to say that it wasn't the case? Because one of the main contributing factors of a deeply dissociative disorder is childhood trauma. And it sounds like he experienced a lot of that.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like it can be both that we acknowledge that it is a common misconception that is the case, and also like, I don't know, may very well could have happened. And also destigmatizing DID just in general of that it's just like a little psychoeducation here. Sometimes people don't know that they even have it.
Well, and I want to be very clear that that's exactly why I'm asking this, is because I'm reading this and I'm friends with a psychologist and I'm interested in psychopathy and I almost went to school to be a therapist. And so I'm just going, hey? And also, I watch too much Criminal Minds and then read books by the people that helped inspire that show for real. So I'm just like, I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of things happening. And
it very well could be that could be part of it. I have engaged with people who are aware of that there are alters. I have seen people switch in front of me. The question gets presented that oftentimes happens of like, okay, well, once we start normalizing certain experiences, then acknowledging that we're nuanced and way more complex than, these things in the DSM. Things that start to happen. Just the same thing with like borderline, or the same thing with like I'm trying to think of like another one that's off the cuff, like divisive. But you get my drift. Is that it? Once you start looking, it's like, oh right, okay, and then you ask more questions, and then it gets more, and then it's a little bit more fuzzy, and then that's whenever it's less. Right? Like the only reason to have a diagnosis is so that we have common language, so you can find resources for tools, and that's the route that I go.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, let's find the common language so you can find the tools and do the things. But anyways, that's my high horse.
This is unrelated, but I thought of you the other day in therapy in real time because we were talking about something and my therapist goes, I don't know that I've seen enough from you or basically she was like, I don't know that I've ever really had a reason to offer any sort of diagnosis of OCD to you. She said, but I will say that you have some tendencies. And I was like, But it cracked me up because as soon as she said it, I was like, yeah, listen, I'm not asking for one. I'm just letting you know about this thing that I do in my head all the time. But anyway.
That's so funny.
But that's very helpful.
I just the other day said that most things I feel like OCD is a spectrum because, I mean...
Super fair.
Also, let it not go unsaid that we're constantly responding to our environment. So I'm not even... This is a whole another thing, and this is a branch I'm not going to travel down today. But if we all are a part of a really fucked up system, kind of makes a little bit of sense. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
we're all just figuring out what makes it feel like we're going to survive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So...
What was your question?
You answered it.
Okay, great.
Don't worry. So, okay. So
I blacked out. Sorry, I'm back.
Well, we've talked about where Carl came from, the trauma that is Carl, the
Trauma
delusions
that is Carl.
that Carl has. And of course, the main one being that he has always seen this woman given to him by a ghost, basically, that he will marry. That is like his soulmate, right? And so on April 22nd, 1930, while working at the Marine Hospital in Key West, Carl met Maria Elena Milagro de Hoyos, and this is what she looks like. Do you want to describe her for the class?
She has a really angelic look to her. Really dark brown hair. Looks really shiny. Again, porcelain-looking skin. Really pursed lips.
She looks like a cherub. Like, she's beautiful.
She does look like a cherub. You're totally right.
Well, she'd been brought in by her mother for an exam. And the moment that Carl sees her, everything changed.
Okay.
It all snapped into place in his mind because this was her. This was the dark-haired woman from his visions, the one that the Countess of Kozel had supposedly been showing him his entire life. Elena was widely known around Key West as a local beauty, which only reinforced his belief that fate had like really caught up with him. Like, here she is. This is who I have seen my whole life. Elena came from a family that was being pretty decimated by tragedy. I mentioned that her father was a cigar maker, but later her mother would die of tuberculosis.
Oh my God.
As would one of Elena's sisters. And that same sister's husband was killed in a horrific workplace accident when he was electrocuted trying to save a coworker.
Oh my God.
But generally speaking, tuberculosis would pretty much tear through her entire family, ultimately. I did mention that she herself was already married. She had wed Luis Mesa in 1926, but after she suffered that miscarriage, he left her and moved to Miami. But remember, they were still legally married, always. So even when eventually she will succumb to this illness, she was always a married woman, even though she was on her own.
Okay.
So when Elena was diagnosed with tuberculosis, as we know from every story that we've ever heard throughout history, this was a death sentence. Yeah. Because the most you could really do was like move somewhere and breathe good air. Like there was really nothing. So Carl threw everything he had at trying to save her. While Elena was still alive, Carl liked to tell himself that they were in some kind of epic, tragic love story. But in reality, again, let's be very clear, in reality, that was not happening. She sought treatment at the United States Marine Hospital, and he met her there because he worked as a radiologic tech. And so they met each other, but they were not in love. There is absolutely no evidence that she and Carl were ever dating. They were not a couple. They were not in a mutual consensual relationship. What it was a one-sided fixation. Be very clear there. So he was her radiologist and a pretty ever-increasing presence in her home because he brought medical equipment. He tried experimental treatments. He showed up a lot. And at the same time, he started to lavish her with gifts and jewelry and clothing and declarations of love.
Because a dying woman needs jewelry and clothing.
And I have to think, listen, I know I'm speculating here. I'm sorry to do this, but I just don't think that he really understood she is dying. I think to him it was sort of like, okay, yeah, this thing's going on, but I'm going to fix it because this is my soulmate and we're going to be together forever because this is what I have known my whole life. And so let me court you. But it was one-sided. Nothing in the historical record suggests that she returned those feelings, that she indicated that maybe she could. Like, she was just sick. That's it. So she was living with her parents, and Carl was basically inserting himself into her life under the cover of caregiving and medical help. And again, I watch a lot of Criminal Minds. And I'm just like, oh, this reminds me so much of how offenders like to insert themselves into investigations, right? Like he just wants to be a part of the tragedy. So, anyway.
Ugh, I'm anxious.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So I looked it up to see if that was like a reasonable instinct or if I really have just brainwashed myself with all of the television that I'm watching. But it actually really does mirror a behavior that we see in a lot of offenders, which is a pattern. There's a name for that self-insertion, which is self-insertion into proximity to the object of obsession.
Wow. Okay.
It's not a catchy phrase or term, but that's what it is. And so especially happens when those cannot form real relationships, instead try to manufacture access and proximity to the object of their obsession.
It's literally manufactured consent.
Ding, ding. It's a psychological pattern, and it shows up across a lot of different types of criminal behavior.
Yeah, of course.
So in professional terms, you see it in things like stalking and erotomanic delusions, where a person becomes convinced that something or someone is meant to be, regardless of how that person feels.
This happens a lot with like parasocial relationships.
Yes. Yes, 100%. And this is sometimes described clinically as erotomania, where the person believes another, like often unreachable or unaware person is in love with them. So you see this a lot with, like you just said, parasocial, but also celebrity stalking cases.
Yeah.
For anyone who's read The Gift of Fear, Gavin DeBecker talks a lot about the celebrities that he's worked with that had stalkers, and that comes up a lot, where they're sort of like, oh, you know, this was a signal, or she loves me because she said this thing.
I always think of Selena every time.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's this belief that sort of drives them to insert themselves, even when, like you said, there isn't anything mutual, but they're looking at it as like, no, of course there is. Like, we're on the same page. You also see a really similar dynamic in some criminal contexts where offenders embed themselves in investigations, like after something has happened.
That's the first thing I thought of like returning to the crime scene kind of stuff.
Yes. So like fire setting offenders who show up at the scenes, or like the very real case of the murderer who actually worked at, as an EMT that would time it so that by the time he called in the crime, he got back to the hospital in time to actually bring the ambulance to the dump site. Like, yes. So again, I'm not trying to like go off the rails here, but I'm just looking at this and going, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
this doesn't, we're not
your
moving
pattern
in a good
recognition
place.
is really popping off.
Yeah. It's all the ABC mouse that my toddler and I are doing. So in Carl's case, while Elena was alive, he was not her boyfriend, right? They weren't partners, but he assumed this role of caregiver and medical helper and gift giver, and roles that gave him constant proximity and involvement in her illness. And so that pattern, moving from being a helper into a presence that she really didn't invite, is consistent with how some obsessive offenders operate. They don't wait for consent, they create their own, and that's what you said, so here we are. Well, I'll actually, this next note I'm going to save for later. So anyway, Elena died on October 25th, 1931, in her parents' home in Key West. Carl paid for the funeral, and he did have the family's permission to do this. He did ask, at least, because that would have been so insulting, I think, otherwise, if he was just like, I paid for it in advance. But he did get their permission. But this is where we start to get even more like, what's happening? Because he pays for the whole funeral, and with the family's permission, he has a private, above-ground mausoleum built for her in the cemetery. And he will start to show up almost every single night to this mausoleum, and he will sit there and he will sing to her and he will talk to her. Thoughts on this?
Isolated event wise, not knowing the context, I'd be like, okay, this is a mourning lover, this is a mourning partner, this is a mourning person.
And this is the mausoleum, by the way.
Oh my God, it looks like
nice.
a house.
Yeah, it's humongous, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I spend a lot of time in cemeteries, and I really don't think that it's a problem for anyone to visit graves or specific graves, whether you knew them or not. I think, generally speaking, it's nice to give the dead attention in that kind of context and be with them and make sure that I mean, I have like cleaned debris off of graves of people that I certainly didn't know. And not to be, again, not to like virtue signal or do anything, but just like, if it were my family, you know, I'd want this, and maybe they don't have anyone left or what. Like, I'm not saying that him doing that is a problem. I just wonder, and I have no answer for this, but if I were her family, would I feel like, dude, let her rest?
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
And we don't know. I don't know. I don't know if they were like, wow, I wish he would leave her alone. I'm not sure.
I definitely feel some kind of way about it if it was my family member and if it was this person. So from that perspective, yes, I would be. If I was around for all of this and it was a family member, I would feel very, very weird about it.
It's conflicting. I think weird's the right word, because it's like, he didn't kill her, you know? He's not harassing her, but he's not family, and they weren't in a relationship, and I don't know. I'm conflicted. But then I started to look at it from a Catholic perspective, and I wonder, because if her family were Catholic and everything that we know suggests that they were, then Elena's soul wasn't supposed to be hanging around that cemetery. It was supposed to be with God. Her body should be at rest. And so if he's just always there, on the one hand, it's like, well, she's not there anyway. He's not bothering her. She's gone.
Right.
But on the other hand, it's like, I don't know. You can pray to God about her.
Okay, if we were really leaning into this, what is happening, right? What does this feel like? This feels like it's more about him than it is about her, and that feels like the issue.
I think that's really well said. Yes, yes, I think it's really crossed that place of, it can't accept that she is gone. Her family's trying to grieve. Her family's trying to do whatever they need to do, right? But he's very much in this place of like, I have lost something. And it's like, you lost an acquaintance and a patient.
And that right there is like, okay, all of this is obviously speculation, but the way that this feels right now is that he has projected an ideal person onto her, and then that is what he's engaging with, which is completely dismissive of who she actually is as a person.
Beautiful. Yes.
So that's pretty activating to be like, oh, you're not mourning her. You never even knew her or met her or saw her. You only ever engaged with her in a way that would satisfy yourself.
You're mourning the end of your delusion that you never got to fulfill. Yeah, okay. Beautiful. Yes. It's very well said. And I also want to put a pin in that idea of like Catholicism and stuff, because we're going to revisit it later. So about a year and a half after she has passed, Carl still has he's been doing this every night. He's always there. And so in April of 1933, he cannot cope. It is not enough to be there and to sing to her and talk to her and visit her resting place. So he goes to the cemetery after dark. He breaks into the mausoleum and he removes her body. He hauls her through the graveyard on a little toy wagon, and he brings her back to his house.
I'm so sick.
And he later said that Elena's spirit would visit him while he was at her grave, and that she had asked him to take her with him.
Okay.
So now we've replaced the Countess, right, with Elena. And now Elena's talking to him and saying, take me. I don't want to be here. I want to be with you. So here we go. And I don't know, potentially activating warning about desecrating a corpse with as much respect as possible. I don't know. So once Elena was in his home, Carl began maintaining her. He wired her skeleton together with piano wire. He put glass eyes in her skull. And replaced her skin, which of course was in a state of decomposition, with silk coated in wax and plaster. So sort of like paper mache. When her hair fell out, he made a wig from hair that he had previously gotten from her mother. He stuffed her torso with rags to keep her shape. He dressed her in stockings, gloves, and jewelry, and he kept her in his bed.
I could throw up right now. I am so... My hands are sweating. Oh my God, Heather. This is so much worse than I thought it was going to be. This is so much worse than I thought it was going to be.
Well, as you can imagine, the state of decomposition that she's in would be pretty intense a year and a half later. So he did also use a lot of perfume and disinfectant to try to hide that truth. The picture I'm going to show you is not graphic, but it is her. So I'm letting you, as Jerry, my friend, know that. But I wouldn't show you something if it was gory. There's no gore. It's just it's very uncanny valley. So I'm going to show you this. So this is her. Okay. Would you like to play a very terrible game and take a guess at how long this went on?
Bro, my eyes are watering. Do you see my eyes?
Yeah. I'm so sorry, Jerry. Sorry. How long do you think that this...
A year.
7 years. In 1940, Elena's sister Florinda did not physically catch Carl in the act of having her sister, but she started to hear some rumors. People in Key West were talking because Tanzler stopped his routine visits to the mausoleum. And of course, you've been doing this for a year and a half. People are like, that's strange. Did he move on? Neighbors noticed strange behavior, like seeing him through windows with what appeared to be a moving figure inside. And there was gossip about him living with her body. I would like to tell you the horrible fact that the movement of the other figure was him waltzing with her. I wish I could tell you the story gets better, but actually gets worse. Because eventually Florinda, the sister, decides to confront him herself, as I would as well. So she goes to Carl's home to see if this could possibly be true.
Jesus Christ, this is so fucking traumatic.
And she sees Elena's body there. And again, the very uncanny valley of her body, dressed and preserved in his bed. And the direct confrontation is what triggered her to, of course, notify the authorities, which did lead to Carl's arrest in 1940. And like you just said, I can't imagine the trauma, because this is not just like, that's my sister's body, but also, what have you done to my sister's body? Like this is not my sister, right?
Yeah.
And of course, then that sort of realization, I'm sure she didn't know right away, but to learn that it had gone on for nearly a decade is really just, it's a lot. But as you can imagine, the system didn't really know what to do with them. Key West has certainly been home to a lot of eccentric folks, but this was a first. And so he was examined, and I would love your take on this. He was examined and found mentally competent to stand trial. I'm not the psychologist here, but I do know that all that means is that essentially you understand the difference between right and wrong. That's really all it means.
Yeah.
So I don't... I feel... This is where I ethically feel very conflicted, because I do not look at Carl and think, yep, he is mentally competent, period. So he was charged with removing a body from a grave, but everybody get ready to get mad about the court system. By the time it made it to court, the statute of limitations had expired, so he was released. It's going to get worse. After the discovery, doctors examined Elena's remains, and in a move that feels deeply wrong to her and any sliver of ethics anybody has ever had, her body is put on public display at a funeral home.
What? Why?
Would you like to take a guess at how many people lined up to see her?
I cannot even begin to guess.
7,000.
Why did they do that?
I don't know.
This feels so... Oh, I could so go off on I know you already know where I'm going with this. This is the manifestation of what it's like to be a woman.
Not only that, but this is the manifestation of why we wanted to make this podcast. Because you want to talk about sensationalism. It's taking an abused corpse and saying, hey, everybody, come look at this corpse.
Oh, that makes me want to cry.
horrific. And this is where I go back to my point about Catholicism and saying that, like, her body is at rest, right? And because her body is at rest, her soul is with God. Mm-hmm. Where in this 7 years has her body been at rest? So, as you can imagine, unfortunately, the press lost their goddamn minds. Newspapers across Florida and beyond covered the case. And in a very disturbing twist that I'm sure you saw coming, the public begins to see Carl not as a criminal, but as like a tragic romantic. Later research, because I know you're probably thinking it, you don't want to ask. Other people listening are wondering. Later research would suggest that everything that you're expecting did happen, because decades after the case, doctors who had examined her body said that there was evidence that, of course, he was sexually abusing the corpse. Everything that, on all the research I said, it says like having sex with, and I have such a problem with that verbiage because no, that's not what was happening.
That's literally not what's happening.
That implies two people in consent. That's not what was happening. I will say others argue that because that claim didn't surface until years later and it wasn't presented at the original hearing, it's hard to verify. Why? Of course. Okay. Anyway. But the allegation, of course, follows. And makes sense to me.
Yeah. Here's my... What would prevent that?
He didn't respect her body enough to leave it the fuck alone.
No, there's no world in which, in my understanding of the male psyche, or just like literally anyone who it doesn't even have to be gendered, anyone who is going to go so far as to
constant preservation of yes. Okay. Yes. So what you and I are echoing back and forth to each other, though, of course, is that through this whole story, through this whole case, through this whole almost decade-long ordeal, Elena, very much a real person, totally lost. She's absolutely forgotten in this, right? Because it's all, Carl did this thing, and he fell in love, and they were soulmates, and, da-da-da-da, and he did this, and he took care of her, and he held her, and da-da. Hello? A woman died, and then was robbed from her grave, and then abused, and he is not a tragic romantic. Like, this is not book talk stuff, Yeah. Some positive-ish news. She was eventually taken back to the cemetery. She was buried, but this time, thank God, in an unmarked grave. We do not know where she is.
Good.
I'm sure that her family does, but no one, no. Carl, meanwhile, leaves Key West, and again, not in disgrace, right? People aren't after him with pitchforks. They're not like, you're a creep, get out of here. So he just is like, I'm going to go somewhere now. He goes back to Zephyr Hills.
Oh.
And surprise, surprise, turns his story into content. He wrote an autobiography that ran in a pulp magazine in 1947. He later became a U.S. citizen. He was never held accountable in any meaningful way. And, as if we just can't let the tragedy go, he never lets Elena go. He makes a death mask of her face, uses it to create a life-size doll, which he kept in his bed for the rest of his life. There is rumor, this is more sensational, right? There's rumor that people say he died holding it. But I don't think that that's true. What is true is that when he was found after his death in 1952, there was a waxen figure of Elena nearby, wrapped in silk and cloth. And so even at the end, I mean, he was still living it with this version of her that only existed in his mind. Because again, like you said, he did not know her. Nobody knew her, right? Everyone that has spoken her name or talked about her story, even you and I right now, I don't know her, And for him to think he has any sort of claim or ownership over her is just absolutely unbelievable. So, I mean, yeah, a lot of hot topics here for you and I mean, in terms of obsession versus love and belief versus justification. And there's a quote that popped into my brain when I was doing this story, because when I first did this was probably over a decade ago, so I've lived a lot more life now too and see everything a little bit differently, but something came into my brain. There's a Stuart Chase quote that I think about kind of frequently, especially when it comes to our podcast, that says, for those who believe, no proof is necessary. For those who do not believe, no proof is possible. And I think that with Carl, that's so poignant as well, of like, there would have been no conversation or discussion or conviction that what you are doing is wrong and none of this is real, and she doesn't want to be at this home with you, but I just don't, even if someone had been around to say that to him, I just don't think it would have
broke the delusion.
Mm-mm. So that's the story.
I have so many things to say. I just don't know which direction to go in. First of all, my jaw, it feels like someone punched me in the jaw, because I just realized I've been clenching my face so hard listening to this, because I feel like I could, like, I feel that I could throw a fit with the level of rage that I feel.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a really incredibly important story that I'm glad you told me. I, of course, thought of that guy that they just caught that we've been chatting about.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you know what's, I didn't.
You didn't even think of,
because
it's
crazy?
So, yeah, I know. It makes sense to me that you didn't think about him, though, because it's so, we don't have any information about really much about this guy. And
as what Jerry's talking about, because it's January 25th right now when we're recording this, the guy in Pennsylvania, right? Was it Philadelphia? I don't know, but
Lancaster County.
That's right. That robbed hundreds of graves.
That's what's speculated as hundreds. He was just selling. I actually accidentally, before I deleted everything, socials wise, I accidentally saw the body cam footage from the cops that were in the storage unit, and it showed the bodies that he had in the storage unit and like decomposition, like active decomposition.
They weren't all like skeletons?
No. And I can't get it. It's one of those things that I would have never willingly looked at.
I'm so sorry. I've done that a lot with social media where I've seen things. Yeah.
And now it's stuck in my head and I can't get it out. So it kept popping up. Yeah, I really think that that's another tree branch for another time, is the desensitization to all those things.
That's like a whole topic. We should just have like a yap episode.
We really should, because I think that's you and I were texting about that yesterday, the desensitization of violence and gore graphic things. I was thinking about him in that he was just like selling body parts on Facebook Marketplace, basically. So it's like he was a part of all the odds and oddities groups and was like literally selling, like somebody posted a listing of like a 6-month-old skull. So, and he's posting these pictures and people are making comments about his looks and stuff, and even you and I did. It's just like, I feel that deep desire to put people who do deeply disturbing things into categories, and it's like the fear parts of our lizard brains being like, I want to be able to identify this out in the public so that I can protect myself, right? That's what this so much of it is about. And the fact of the matter is that you could literally, I mean, as scary as it is, it's like maybe he did seem like just a totally normal dude.
Well, I'm going to say again, everyone needs to read The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker, because there's a whole lot to be said about everything you're saying right now.
I mean, it's actually sold out on the website that I usually get, but I order books from. It's sold out. So maybe it's becoming more popular right now.
It has been popular for decades.
Yeah.
It is.
There's some sort of uptick. I am curious about so many things, but something that I was thinking about towards the end was something that all-consuming, where it takes over your entire being. Like, his entire life is dedicated to this. What do you think about that? Like, what is that? Where do you feel like you see it in current day? What's the equivalent of that? What is that?
I think that
the obsession part.
Well, I think that that's the obsession and the delusion, that he's doing what his whole life calling has led him to. But I think that's exactly the reason why people are like, oh, it's so tragic and sad, as opposed to, because this is, and I wrote this in my notes, and listen, we can cut it if we feel like I'm way off base here, but this is a woman whose body was abused. And I don't care how much the abuser may have thought that it was not abuse because he was in love with her and whatever.
It doesn't fucking matter.
A spade is a spade. I do not care what your intentions were, right? No. Or where your heart was. I don't give a fuck. Because for whatever reason, people hear this story and are like, God, what a sad, crazy guy, right? Like, he loved this woman, but he was just nuts. We would not say this about a stalker who killed his victim to ensure that no one else could be with her. Mm-hmm. We don't look at someone like O.J. Simpson and say, well, he just loved Nicole so much, he made a mistake. And I think the reason that I'm putting those things together, even though from the outside these seems like very different cases, is because I would invite everyone to get curious about what it would have looked like if Elena was healthy. What would have happened if this woman, who he was sure was his soulmate, was well and said, no, thank you, to his advances? Do we really think that a guy who was willing to do this would have gone, okay, yeah, no, I get it, cool, yeah, good luck?
Yeah.
Hello? And I'm sure that some people would be like, well, but that's not fair, you can't speculate about that. But it's like, no, if this person had the capacity to do what he did, I have absolutely no reason to think that he would have had the respect and the discipline to hear the word no and move on with his life.
I think that that's an incredible question to ask, because it really turns everything on its head. And that feels very familiar. That story in media feels like, okay, this obsessive person. There's so many people that came to my mind as you're talking about people who are obsessed with other people, winds up turning violent. And
if I can't have you, no one can have you.
Yes, and the difference is that she never had a say. She never got to say no. She never, at least as far as we know. I mean, think about it, throwing this out there. What if he had made advances towards her while she was still alive and she said no? Then what?
If I am actively dying of tuberculosis,
get the fucking jewels away from me.
But it's not even that. It's that the last thing that I'm concerned with is making sure you know that I'm not interested in you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's sort of like, thank you, that's really sweet. Because you're not thinking, when I'm gone, this is not done. You're thinking, it's, look, I'll be nice to him. He's being kind to me. He's trying to help me. I appreciate that. And you're thinking, there is a finality to this interaction. In what world would you be like, I better make sure that he knows with no uncertainty that I don't want anything to do with this, because you're dying. I count that a little bit, and that, like, part of me feels that projecting myself into this, right? Yeah.
If this were my lived experience, I would be like, you're taking up too much space. This is my time. And I would be like, find me a different radiologist. I would want this person, just. Do
you feel empowered enough as a woman in the 30s to say, I want a different doctor?
I'd like to think so.
I don't know.
I don't know what it would. I don't know that. I feel so strongly. I mean, even on an airplane, men taking up space, I immediately it just fills me. Ooh. She's like, I'm mad too. It fills me with so much rage when, like, men take up space, and, like, I will purposefully, like, not move on the sidewalk and things like that. And so that's what this feels like to me, is that he just took up so much of her space, and you only die one time. And even in death, you're taking up her space. You're literally taking up her space.
Yeah.
with what you want.
Yeah, I know.
This is one of the most disturbing things I've ever heard in my life.
It's so disturbing, but I think it's because, again, when you look at it from like, wow, what a novelty of true crime, it is very much like, wow, what a story. But when you do actually sit with it and you look at it from a place of, I mean, let's be real, we're looking at it from a place of being a woman, first and foremost, but also from a place of what is the psychological impact here? What's the psychology happening here? It also, I'll be honest with you, it gets me all conflicted in my brain, just like, what's her name? The one that killed her kids.
Andrea Yates.
Just like Andrea Yates, in the sense of, I am not excusing what he did. I am not being an apologist for what he did. But I do have to take this space of going, but this is not what a healthy person thinks about, plans to do, carries out, thinks is acceptable.
I mean, here's the thing, too, though, is that similarly, this cat will not leave she's
like,
grabbing.
Are you okay?
She's
Not
grabbing
okay.
onto my shoulder. I'm like, is something wrong? Looking around like, hello, is something on fire? This could be its own book. Okay.
Oh gosh.
Again, the difference here off of your point of like a healthy person, the only thing that differentiates if someone's behavior is acceptable or not is if people are accepting it or not.
Put that on a t-shirt.
So the fact that, for example, people are okay with something like a mass genocide, or people are okay with like killing children, right? Yeah. You would say no mentally well person would be okay with that. She just bit me. Okay, all right. Jesus.
She's like, and I'm not okay with this.
I'm not okay with it. No mentally well person would like allow these things to happen, but we have examples all around us of people doing heinous things and other people being like, well, that's just like how things are. Or what a war-torn lover. So it unfortunately is the permissibility, or I don't even know if that's even a word, but people permitting a behavior, how it is packaged or presented or accepted or received, or then how the narrative changes completely determines whether it's acceptable or not.
Well, now I'm losing my mind because I'm thinking about the fact that the only reason we even have the laws that we have is because of the Bible. And now I don't know where to go with any beliefs that I have, because it's like, what is right? What is wrong?
That's why we wanted to do this, is because as crazy as it sounds, that is what we're doing here, is asking these questions of like, wait, what is right? What is wrong? What's okay? What's not okay?
My personal ethics
yes.
and values do not align with what Carl Tanzler did, but also my personal ethics and values wish that he had known to ask for help and that it had existed for him in his lifetime. And also I'm really sorry for her family and everything else, and my brain hurts.
I know. And I do think that he should have had access to help and been able to get help. And
I also think that the fact that the statute of limitations was up is just bananas. Like, I don't know, file for an extension.
Also, it's also arbitrary. Like, okay, we're going to set a statute of limitations on desecrating a body. I want to look into that after this. I'm going to look and see if that's changed or not. This was a fantastic story. I have so many more things to say. We're at an hour 40, so let's pin these things down, in that this is going to have me thinking for like quite a while, I think.
Yeah. That's what it was with the Andrea Yates story, though, too.
Yeah.
That same thing of, like, it's so cut and dry. Mm-hmm. And then you really kind of dig into the meat of it, and it's like, oh. Mm-hmm. Oh, boy. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, it's cut and dry that it was terrible. It shouldn't have happened. That's a crime. That's easy.
Right.
But then it's all the other stuff around it that's like.
Yeah. The whole spinning the thing and making him like
Like
that,
Romeo and Juliet.
so
Yeah,
that's
like, oh, poor
exactly
Carl.
what I was thinking about was Romeo and Juliet. And whenever, as soon as you said it, that's what I thought of. And it's like, this is deeply disturbing. Wow, great. This was fucked up.
Yeah.
This was so fucked up.
Yeah.
As are most things that we talk about. It's fucked up. However, I did learn a lot, and it did feel very challenging, and I feel that I've been opening up some little nooks and crannies that I wouldn't have gone down otherwise. So for that, I'm grateful. Wow.
Yep. Well, anyway, we'll see y'all next week.
We gotta, so I have to, like, what's a little nugget we can leave off on? Because this feels...
Don't let your doctors into your home.
Don't let your doctors into your home.
Well, no, because that sounds like I'm blaming the victim. Don't go to doctors.
That still makes like victim blaming.
Just don't leave your house ever.
Here we go. Don't trust a radiologist. I'm sorry to all my radiologist people out there. I'm just kidding. It was just a joke. Okay, love you. Bye.